Yes, people, and welcome back to the Armory TV. I'm GTalks Arsenal, your host. Hopefully, most of you know who I am by now, but if you don't know, get to know. I'm here hosting, obviously, my debut for GTalks, and tonight, obviously, the talking point is going to be Reiss Nelson, a name that I don't think many of us imagined we would be talking about so often or so frequently over the last couple of days at this stage of the season. But to kick off my show, making its debut on the Armory TV. It's going to be a show that is going to be probably being hosted either every Tuesday or every Wednesday, depending on the availability of guests, depending on obviously the football fixtures. It will be sometime between 6:30 and 8 o'clock on either a Tuesday and a Wednesday. But without any further ado, I'm absolutely thrilled to have my brother from another mother, Albert from Albert JTV. Big up Albert, man. Say hello to the people.
Yes, I'm this. It's not the first time. It's the second time on this channel actually. First time for your show, but yeah, big up to for the invite. Thanks for the invite. See people in the chat already. Of course, love and support. Very important to do a show before Champions League games. Trust me.
I hear that, man. I hear that, bro. I hear that. Definitely, man. So yeah, we'll head straight to the chat straight away. Obviously, we've got Mr. Silver Fox himself. The Silver one, yes, my bros. Big up Silver, big up Tony for tuning in. We've got Lee Meadows, former Cannon Chatter member. Absolutely appreciate your support by coming into the chat. Yes, my friend. Good to see you guys. Good to see you too. And we've obviously got Bobby here from our community as well. Yes, G. Best new signing since Vieira. Oh, I feel absolutely privileged for you to say that. Not quite Vieira, but you know what I mean. I appreciate the thoughts. But yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's like obviously at this stage of the season, I don't think any of us would imagine that we were going to be talking about Reiss Nelson. You know, given the start we've made, and given the fact that we are absolutely flying in both the Premier League and the Europa League, regardless of what certain sections of the fan base may want or believe at this stage. But
Yeah.
Reiss Nelson is a massive talking point, and for obvious reasons, and that goes back to obviously the weekend's game against Nottingham Forest. But I want to go back because I think to really talk about Reiss Nelson, we've got to go back to where it kind of all started. And I think for different fans, this will mean something completely different. So, I mean, when I asked you the question here, what were your thoughts when you first saw Nelson play? I think for every fan, it's going to be different. For some fans, it's going to be they follow the youth ranks of Arsenal football quite a bit. For some people, he's 24 and he's been at the club since he was 8 years old, and it feels like an eternity that he's been on the fringes of the first team. So this could be going years and years ago, or it could be Forest. Obviously this Sunday for a lot of kind of new gunners. So for you, Albert, going back to whenever it was when you first set eyes on Reiss Nelson, in whatever capacity, what were your first thoughts about him as a player?
I mean, my first sort of interaction or people, it's kind of what you hear through the Arsenal fan mail, really. To be honest, someone's coming through, and to sort of kind of get straight into it, he really should be where Saka is now, and for the last 2 years, he was spoken about very, very highly. I think for me, I look at his two loan spells, and I don't know. Everyone's going to be different. If they followed him when he was, I think it was Hoffenheim, was it, and then obviously he was at Feyenoord as well.
Yeah,
I wouldn't exactly say he tore it up. He probably had a better, he probably had a better loan spell when he was at Hoffenheim than probably I would say Feyenoord. People say, yeah, but he got to the conference final. I said, yeah, okay, fair enough. But I don't think he personally ripped it up when he was on loan. But yeah, I think it's quite ironic, really. The guy that he came on for. We would be talking. We was hoping as Arsenal fans we'd be talking about Reiss Nelson in that kind of higher echelons, the way we look at Saka the last 2.5 years he's been in England team, but sorry, Arsenal team, sorry. But I think with Nelson, I think my biggest issue with him. First, let me get it out there. His injury record is not great reading. That's held him back quite a bit, to be honest with you. But I think for me, what I've not seen from him, and we're going to come on to one of the guys potentially later, is for me he lacks aggression.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with someone taking on a defender and losing the ball because that happens. That's football. That's your job as a winger.
Yeah.
To give them, but I don't see somebody who wants the ball enough. I don't see somebody who's aggressive enough. I don't see somebody who scores enough goals. I don't see somebody that takes enough risks.
Mm.
And that's on top of obviously having not a great injury record at Arsenal. So for me, he's flatter to deceive, and people need to kind of separate. Oh, he needs to support the player. That's the most common denominator here about any player. You got to support the players. I
Yeah.
mean, that kind of goes without saying. You know,
Mm.
that's footballers say, you know, is it possible you can run around a lot today? Like, I mean, come on, like, you know,
Yeah.
you're going to support the player, but you know, you can only. I always say the acid test is, man, your own set of eyes don't lie to you. So there might be Arsenal fans out there that think he's been unlucky. There's some that probably want him gone. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I think he's been at Arsenal long enough to have made an impression
Mm-hmm.
on two managers.
Yeah.
And for me, he's going to have to do something very, very well to get a contract extension from now to the end of the season.
I hear you. I hear you. And it's two things there that I kind of want to pick up on and kind of touch upon that you mentioned. You know, one you mentioned was his injury record. Now, from when I remember when he was both on loan at Hoffenheim and Feyenoord, both of those loan spells actually started quite well, and they were disrupted through injury. Because I remember seeing, you know, I don't often watch our players on loan, but you hear snippets, you
Yeah,
see videos, they come through the timeline, they come through the grapevine from the Arsenal, our fans and sections of our fans do a great job in. I don't even have to watch players on loan because I get regular scouting updates on the timeline of how they're doing.
yeah, it's true.
Obviously, a lot of the time it's the positive stuff. It's very rarely do they report or feedback the negative stuff, and it's usually because, you know, sections of these fans have a soft spot for a player, you know, whoever
Yeah,
that player be. So, but I saw enough and I heard enough, you know, to get to the point where I thought, you know what, maybe off the back of the first loan, he could have kick-started his career. Maybe off the back of the second loan, he could have kick-started his career.
yeah,
And that's what it feels like with Reiss Nelson. It feels like a lot of if, buts, or maybes.
maybe.
But
Yeah,
it's never quite happened. And you know, the second thing you touched upon is, you know, seeing a player that doesn't necessarily always want the ball in the difficult area. When he's got the ball, he's not as aggressive as he ought to be. And I have to say, up until his performance against Nottingham Forest, that's exactly how I felt about Reiss Nelson in both pre-season and in the times I've watched him this season, because he got opportunities in pre-season when we toured the US, and I wasn't impressed. He got opportunities in the Europa League, and again, I wasn't impressed. I even went on to say he's like a lie detector, because he just goes back and forth, you know, but nothing
yeah,
really happens, you
yeah,
know. And that's what I mean. Every time he picks up the ball, and he's picked up the ball in certain situations, I'm like, you know, I'm screaming at the TV, take your man on, beat your man, you know, get to the byline, pick, you know, pinging across, like do something. But it always very much seems to be he picks up the ball, he runs a couple of yards forward, instead of actually imposing himself on the game, he tracks back, he plays it safe. And when you compare that to the players we have in both the left and the right, Martinelli and Saka, they do the absolute opposite. Martinelli and Saka are constantly looking to beat their man. They're constantly looking to get a ball into the danger area. So for me, when I look at him, I'm thinking to myself, you know, how much do you want this? You know, because
yeah,
you're seeing what the likes of Martinelli and what Saka are doing, who are actually, you know, quite a bit younger than you. I think what we're talking at least 2-3 years younger than him. So I have questioned him. I mean, when I first saw him, I can't actually remember the first time I saw him, because I mean, he's 24 now, and I know with Arsenal we always try to bring them in early, in and around the first team, and it feels like he's been on the fringes of the first team for absolutely an eternity. So I can't actually recall the first time I saw him, but what I do know is every time I've seen him, I've seen snippets of real potential, but I've seen absolutely no consistency in his form and in his performances. And that's just my personal opinion. We'll head to the comments before I throw the next question at you. So we've got here. Oh, they're absolutely flying in. So we've got Tony here. Reiss Nelson was a player full of promise. Didn't really work out for him, probably to do with management, system, and players around him. But when he came in on Sunday, he just looked comfortable. Bobby Brown, big up my boy Bobby Brown. Yes, my guys, big up to you. Glad you can actually tune in, bro. I know it was a little early for you to jump on, but yeah, I appreciate you tuning in, brother. Lee saying, I was so pleased for him to make the most of the opportunity on Sunday. Like you said, he's had injuries, will definitely divide opinions. Bobby here from Armory TV. The Forest performance needs to push him on now. If he doesn't, I'm sorry, but we need to cut our losses. We can't offer a new deal after one performance. Cannons, big up Cannons from the Armory TV team.
Yes, can.
First off, evening, gents. Great to see you both. Great to see you, bro. Has never had 6 games on the spin. Every time he's in, then out. Teta seems to like him, and I think Nelson needs this. When he came on against Forest, he was tentative. Then the goal came, and he was like a different player. Wanted the ball, wasn't hiding. I think he needs a manager that gives him confidence. And he goes on to say, and Teta is that guy. He speaks highly of him. And yes, he does. And that is something we are going to talk about. And then from FTSN, we've got big up, guys. Big up yourself. Thank you so much. And last comment from Lee. Nelson's first Prem minutes since opening day of the season, sub-appearance versus Brentford. Always a good point to put into context when we are obviously critiquing players. Now, the next thing I'm going to throw at you is obviously your thoughts on Nelson's impact against Forest. Now, to just give you some stats, I know you watched the game and I want you to obviously go by what you saw. But, I mean, he had 63 minutes on the pitch, 3 shots with 100% accuracy, scored 2 goals, got an assist. In terms of his 33 passes, he had basically a 89 to 90% accuracy, 2 key passes in the game, 1 cross at 100% accuracy, and 2 fouls won against him. So, you know, we can chop up the stats all we want. At the end of the day, he came on, which was a forced substitution on Arteta, because Saka went off injured. And I mean, when he came on, put it this way, I was absolutely gutted that Saka had to go off. And when I saw he was bringing on Nelson, I mean, I wasn't doing somersaults, put it that way, because I just thought to myself, well, okay, this is going to be very difficult for us to now push on in this game because I'm going by what I've seen. But just based on what you saw from the minute he came on to obviously the conclusion of the game, aside from what you've seen before and aside from what he might go on to do for the rest of the season, what did you make solely of the performance against Forest?
I mean, he came on, I think he had about, a good 70 minutes, didn't he? 65, 70 minutes? Yeah, when he come on for Saka. So,
65 minutes.
Yeah, because he's, I think he started one of the games in the Europa League. I can't remember what game he started now. But, yeah, I mean, I think you notice a drop-off when Saka come off. That's the first thing. So, it's going to be difficult for him to replicate that. But, I think the best way I can describe it with him, he did okay, don't get me wrong. And I think this is the difference when I say with people that goals transform performances. It changes people's mind. It gets people thinking it might overlook a performance, in terms of somebody scoring a goal. I mean, the best example I can give is one of our ex-players. Good ability, good touch, good technique. Didn't get many goals, and that was Alex Iwobi. Now, people are going to say, "Oh, he's doing bits of everything." I'm talking about in terms when he was here. It was end product.
Yeah,
goals get people talking. It does. It makes a
100%.
massive difference to your game. So the fact he bagged the couple was massive for his confidence. I was pleased for him. Obviously, I think he go on and get the hat trick. But I think it's what someone's mentioned in the chat, but I've also seen it the last few days with Nelson that it's going to take more than one game to turn a lot of people around in terms of to say, you know what, yes, he's finally landed, yes, he's grasped his opportunity. And listen, if he can't take his opportunity under this manager, then I don't think he looks good for him personally. And also on top of that as well, we talk about squad depth for Arsenal, so he will play more games.
Yeah.
Injury permitting, so he will play more
Yeah.
games. So it'd be interesting to see if he plays on Thursday. But yeah, he did okay. I think people made a good point there that when he got the goal, obviously a bit more confidence. He gets the second goal, he gets an assist as well. So yeah, I can't complain really. You know, I mean, the guy comes and score 2 goals. That's pretty decent. That's not a bad way to sort of turn it around a bit. So yeah, I haven't gone too overboard as I've seen on some of the socials with his performance, because like I said, it's a consistency thing, and to finish up, like I said, if you can't get the confidence or take the opportunity by the scruff of the neck under this manager, because this to be fair, G, he could have gone out on loan before he went to Feyenoord. But from what we hear, he didn't really want to go. But yeah, the jury's still out for me, 100%. But in regards to the question you asked about the Forest game, he did well, and he obviously got the goals, which elevates your game. Goals are important, man. Trust me.
Yeah, definitely. I can only agree. It was one of those things where obviously we started the game really well. We obviously got the goal through Martinelli, superb cross from Saka. And you kind of thought at that point that we would go on and just kind of blow them off, the park pretty quickly. But I mean, obviously we did eventually. But I remember, like all Arsenal fans, I think, the sight of Saka going down just makes our heart, skip a beat. Because he's just so, regardless of, the kind of, in my opinion, unfair criticism he gets at times, Saka's been carrying this club for many a season, over the last 2 or 3 seasons. So, and for me, I've always been of the opinion that we rely far too much on our young players, far too much. That's why for me as an Arsenal fan, I wasn't against the likes of Rafinha coming to the club or the likes of Gnabry coming to the club. A lot of Arsenal fans will say, it will stifle development. It will hinder their opportunities. I think I've seen enough of Saka and Martinelli to believe that players like Rafinha or players like Gnabry or players of that quality, if they were to come into this Arsenal team and this Arsenal squad, there's no guarantee they're going to get first team football. There's no guarantee, because what I see from the likes of Martinelli and Saka is they are up for the fight. They're up for the competition. And if we really want to get to the peak of where we deserve to be or where we feel we should be as a club, we've got to have 2 quality players in every single position. And at the moment, we just don't have that like for like. Our first 11 is for me is a very, very strong first 11. And we do have a couple of injuries. Obviously, the likes of ESR would be pushing for our first team place. The likes of Zinchenko would be pushing for our first team place. But when you look beyond ESR and Zinchenko, very few of the rest of the bench or the rest of the squad, for me, are pushing for our first team place. So, it's really important that we don't rely so heavily on the likes of Saka. So when he went down, I just thought, oh gosh, forget the World Cup. I just thought about our season and and most immediately this game. So when I saw Nelson come on, I'm going to be honest, I thought nothing of it. I thought, okay, if we can, I'm sure we'll still win the game. But I did not expect him to have any impact on the match whatsoever. And that was just me going by what I've seen in both pre-season and what I saw in the 1 game or 2 games that he played in Europa. So, but what I will say is, well done to the lad. I mean, he came on, as Canna said, he didn't look as confident. He didn't start off confidently, which is probably, to be expected. But he got his goal, and then he went on to have a massive impact on the game. And in many ways, he contributed massively to us getting the 3 points, and in such emphatic, in such an emphatic way. So I just kind of hope that it is the kind of springboard for him to build a career Arsenal. Because even though I've got to the point, prior to this weekend where I'd lose no sleep about him leaving the club, I'd love nothing more for him to turn things around between now and the end of the season and potentially have a future at the club. Now, whether or not I think or believe that's going to happen, we'll discuss that
Mm.
in a little while. But we'll head to the comments and we'll bring some of these up. And we won't go through all of them, just the ones that are relevant to obviously what we're discussing. And we've got Luke here, Luke Morrison. Good evening, GTalks, Albert JTV, and everyone watching. Big up yourself. Thank you for tuning in. Bobby Brown again, same as Eddie for me. Sign him up, give him a few lower level games, then sell. And you know what? This is a very interesting point of view, because I must admit I'm all for this. And the reason why I'm all for this, because for me, I accepted the fact that Eddie Nketiah was kept on a long-term deal. I don't think Eddie Nketiah is good enough to be at Arsenal and be our second string striker or compete with Jesus as, for the number 9 shirt. However, I don't think we should put ourselves in a position where we're allowing up to 15, 20 million pounds in this market to walk right out the door. What are your thoughts on tying down young prospects like Nelson to long-term deals to just then sell them in future windows?
I get it with the likes of the two mentioned, Eddie and Reiss. I mean, I heard the same thing sort of said about Hold on a minute. No, come on, like it's no, that's rubbish. But anyway, yeah, in regards to these two, yeah, I get it, because obviously Eddie was in a situation where he could have left for free, couldn't he? So
this is it.
We've got to stop that happening, man. Whether you as an Arsenal fan like the players or not, whether they want to cry about Ramsey and all that, them players are gone yesteryear, all that. We as a club, we need to stop that happening.
Yeah,
it needs to stop, because it can't continue. That's just awful business, and actually, it makes us look like a laughing stock.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Guendouzi, though. I mean, I'm not being funny. I'm not Guendouzi's biggest fan. I know there's a lot of people that praise him and what he's doing. No, Arteta, there's a reason why he's not at Arsenal. There's a reason why, whether you like it or not. So yeah, I mean, how much that still annoys me with the Guendouzi thing, because we should have got about 34 million for him. But yeah, I get it, man.
Cool.
The Eddie thing, so no, listen, I can't really add much more. I agree. I'd rather Arsenal start getting some decent monetary value in. Than players going for free and terminating contracts. It's madness.
Yeah, it makes it, at the end of the day, we're Arsenal fans and we support Arsenal Football Club. So a lot of the time, it doesn't bother us in terms of what the club are making or, what the club are buying players for. Because I've been quoted many a time say, I don't care, it's not my money. You know what I mean? I'm not losing any sleep. At the same time, we do have to understand that we are a business. So it doesn't make business sense to allow your prospects to just walk out the club for free, regardless of whether or not they have futures at the club or not. At the end of the day, they have a certain market value, and a good business model will ensure that you get market value for, a player at your club. So 100% agree with that, Bobby. We've got Gary, don't waste a tweet, all the way from the States. Hello, G, Albert, and chat room. Hello to you. Lots of other comments here. I'm with Albert. Jury is still out, but has everything around him to succeed. So if he doesn't, then it's on him, in my opinion. We've got here, refs need to protect players like Saka more. We saw Reyes get kicked out of the Premier League. Refs don't seem to know the difference between a foul and letting the game rightly being more physical. And obviously Silva 100% agrees with you. Couldn't care less about England, club over country every time for me nowadays. Gary, has signing Eddie increased his value? Would Nelson be different if we signed him? It's a good point. It's a good point. I think
I'll ask that at the end of the season.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that. No, it's true. I think it's a long season, but at the end of the day, for me, it's a simple answer. It has increased his value because we would have lost him for nothing. So at the end of the day, it might not necessarily have increased his overall market value, but right now, if we sell Eddie within the next, 3 to 4 years, we're going to get a significantly more amount than we were going to get for him had he left at the end of the season for nothing.
Like nothing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Arteta actually gave Holding a 5-year deal last year for the same reason. And then last one before we move on, how much would you offer Reiss and how long of a contract would if you were so inclined. Okay, we will get onto that now because I'm going to run another question by Albert, and it's going to be along the lines of obviously what Nelson is going to go on to do now. So, and I want this in your honest opinion. Now, you can answer it can, and you can answer it will. It's entirely however you want to answer this, you answer it, Albert. But in your humble opinion, can or will Nelson kick on from this Forest game?
In layman's terms, short answer, not sure. If I'm going by what I've seen so far with him breaking into the first team, then that'll be a no. As someone mentioned in the chat, it's a good point. He's got. Although we talk about threadbare squad depth of Arsenal, there's some good players around him there. Some very good players around him, which can bring the best out of him in the attacking final third. He's got to want it more, and whether it's a case of banging down the manager's door, that kind of talking nonsense, that's footballers. They're not happy not to be playing. But we're in 2 domestic cup competitions. We're going to make the knockout stages of the Europa League. Games are coming thick and fast. Obviously, we've got the World Cup in between that. There's no more excuses. The only thing that's going to stop him is 2 things: not getting picked, but he will do under this manager, or 2, injuries. So my answer in short is I have no bloody idea, mate.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think that is the beauty about football. Is it can be frustrating when you see the potential in a player and you really want them to kick on. Because like I said, I've said on multiple streams I want him gone, but that's based on what I've seen so far up to this point.
Yeah.
And like you said, if he can kick on and he takes the opportunities, then I have no reason why I wouldn't want him at the club. Because for me, it's not personal and it never will be personal.
Yeah.
I want players at the club based on how they're performing. At the same time, I do think we need to be careful as a club to potentially signing him up on a long-term deal. And I think, to answer Luke's question in the chat, for me, I don't have any issue signing him up for somewhere. I think, in my opinion, and I'm going to bring it back to you, Albert, to see what you would say. I would not be unhappy with extending his contract to a 3-year contract. But for me, the most important thing would be the wages. I don't know what he's on now. I don't know if anybody in the chat wants to ping
and find out
what it is he's on. But I can't envision a scenario where we're paying Reiss Nelson more than 50k a week. I just not for me. It's even hard for me to even get close to 50k a week. Because I'm thinking to myself, okay, yes, let's protect his value. Let's not allow him to leave the club on a free. And let's hope between now and the next couple of seasons, he can kick on and he can have a place in the squad. At the same time, what I don't want is what we did so many with the previous regime, where we have a substandard average player who is inconsistent, has injuries, but is on crazy wages that we can't get rid of. So for me, it's all about the balancing act. So in your opinion, if we were to sign to extend his contract, how many years would you be happy with, and what would be the kind of wage bracket that you would think would be adequate?
Oh God. Would I even give him one? What's he got? A season left?
Yeah, he's out of contract next summer
in June.
Yeah.
To be honest, if you'd asked me this question
before Sunday,
and no, not even before Sunday. If he'd have been on a run of games, like a Demba Ba when he joined Newcastle he's not Demba Ba, it's Papas, whatever his name was. Anyway, the man scored about 10 goals in 10 games. Then it's a different conversation. The question's a bit more relevant. I think asking that
now
after what, it's to me, I don't really think I can answer it, because if you take away the performance on Sunday, where he wouldn't even have got a game, I don't think. It's a bit difficult.
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
We wouldn't be. We'd be saying you should let him go for a free.
Yeah.
Because he just and that's, I think that's one of those things I do question with him a little bit. I know he's had the 2 loan spells we mentioned before, but how eager was he to go out on loan and play
Yeah.
football
Yeah.
before the final? Because I didn't get the impression he wanted to go
Yeah.
from what we hear. So I'm
Yeah.
like, are you really at Arsenal for the right reasons? But are you too comfortable?
Mm.
So I'll be honest, I can't really. Like I said, I can answer that question probably if he'd gone on a sustained run of brilliant form and goals, assists were coming out of his ears. But it's difficult to answer that question after
I hear you, bro. I
bagging
hear
a
you,
brace
bro.
against Forest. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And Luke's here, I think, kind of, feels the same in terms, history shows he rarely backs these kind of performances up. And obviously, thank you, Luke, for putting that in the chat that he was on 15K. So, yeah, I think that basically says, and that would be my thing. I think with Arteta, just put it this way, it wouldn't surprise me if he does get a contract extension. It wouldn't surprise me. And the reason why I say that is because I have to base that on the fact of what we did with Eddie. Because up until Eddie scored those goals, I was resigned to the fact that I was happy for him to leave the club. And even after those goals, I've got to be honest, I still wouldn't have given him a contract because I wanted us to go out and get, a Jesus and a Osimhen or a Jesus and a Tony. I didn't envision going into the season with Eddie, but at the end of the day, Arteta made the choice. So I'm not going to bang on about it every other tweet that I didn't think Eddie should be at the club. He's at the club now. He's wearing the shirt.
Yeah.
He's wearing the shirt, and at the end of the day, I just got to deal with it. Do you know what I mean? Whether he misses, a hatful of chances or not, he's at the club now for the next 5 years, unless we cash in on the next couple of transfer windows. So it is a hard one. Sometimes as fans, you kind of got to just suck it up and decide, and just kind of accept what the club, what decisions they take. Luke here saying I'd offer him 30K a week, a 2-year deal with an option of a third. Not a bad shout if we are talking contracts at this stage. And then we've got here, if he performs more often for the rest of the season.
And that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah. We've also got Footmoss Sports Talk. Give him lots of appearances and goal assist incentives, bonus, laden type contract. But you've got to give him a chance to make more money. Okay, so maybe an incentive there. And we've got James Wright here saying, big up James Wright. Nelson needs to go for the improvement of the squad. We don't have room. Okay, so now he's going to be a player that divides opinion. And I think that's one of the reasons why we did this show, because I think even before Sunday, there were fans that wanted him gone. I think there are fans that, despite that performance, like myself and you, that are still very skeptical and wouldn't lose any sleep if he did leave the club. However, we've also got to take into account, though, before Sunday, there were fans that are behind him and they want him to stay at the club, and they feel that he doesn't get the opportunities or the appearances that he deserves to kind of further his development. So he definitely is a player that splits opinion, as you can see from the chat. Some are in support, some are pretty much against. Now, one last thing we're going to talk about before we wrap things up is, at the end of the day, there is a massive opportunity when you look at our squad. And the reason why I say this is we've got Saka on the right doing his thing. We've got Martinelli on the left doing his thing. But we don't really have anybody else on either side doing their thing. So when we look at the right-hand side, we have Nelson, who we just hope will kick on after Sunday's performance. We have Marquinhos, who seemed to make a really bright start, but it's kind of
stalled, isn't it?
Yeah, given he's a young player. He's had a couple of appearances in the Europa League where he's done really well and then not so well. He's also had a couple of performances. I think he played for the under-21s the other night, and by all accounts, it wasn't a great show. On the left-hand side, we've got ESR, who last season, people not need to forget, he was exceptionally good. I think he got something like 13 goals and 11 assists or something like that. He was one of our biggest goal contributors across the season. But we know that he's on the road to recovery after surgery for a persistent injury. So when you actually look at it right now, really and truly, we have a hopefully fit Saka for Sunday against Chelsea, and we have a obviously phenomenal Martinelli on the left. But outside of that, there is a real opportunity here, which is one of the reasons why we're doing this show about Reiss Nelson. Because I mean, if you can't take the opportunity now, given the squad or lack of squad depth we have, then boy, you're not going to get another chance. But if we just park the Reiss Nelson conversation for a second now, despite the show being about him, some players that we have been linked with, you know, the likes of Trossard, Brighton, scoring against all the big six, out of contract next summer, could be available on the cheap in January. We've got Zaha, big game match winner for Crystal Palace, out of contract in the summer, could be available on the cheap in January. And we've also recently been linked with a winger who plays for Orlando City, who we played in pre-season, called Torres. I'm not sure how much about him do you know. I don't know much about him at all.
Not a lot.
But looking at maybe potentially more the kind of Trossard and the Zaha links, again, players that really do split the opinion with the Arsenal fan base. Would you fancy potentially going in January for either of them? Or is there an alternative in terms of a winger, bringing a winger to the club in January for Arsenal for the rest of the season?
There's always an alternative. It just depends on what market Arsenal are looking at, really, whether that's within the league, uncovering a gem from South America, possibly, or somewhere else in Europe. The two Premier League guys, the two Premier League links are, to me, are no-brainers. Whether Arsenal fans like it or not, and I'm always big on this, like buying within the league. And some people just, they don't get it, they don't understand it. I said, what's there to understand? Like you've got players that have been playing in the league for a good 3 or 4 seasons. They know the pace of the league. You know the cut and thunder, the pace and all this, and you know that they wouldn't need time to adjust. That's the obvious thing. And you always have to ask yourself the question as an Arsenal fan: would they improve the team? The answer is to both players, yes. So that's a short debate. It's a very short debate. The Zaha one is, I said this on I think I said this on Potsy show the other day. I said this is like a Jack Canori story with him. I mean, with some Arsenal fans, the story is a bit boring. It's not going to come. The opportunity is already gone. And listen, I think this is one that could go either way. Who knows? He's not over the hill, Zaha, and he has what I mentioned that Nelson lacks for me, and that's aggression.
Yeah.
He wins a lot of free kicks and turnovers and whatever. So with Zaha, it's good. It might surprise people, but it shouldn't if you've actually watched my content. I'm not Zaha's biggest fan, to be honest with you. But I'd be willing to put that as, because I think his attitude stinks. So that's just my opinion. But if he's gonna come and you know, potentially come to his boyhood club, as we're led to believe that he supports Arsenal.
Yeah.
Listen, if anyone who wants to clarify that, clarify it. But listen, I believe it when I see it. But listen, if he came to Arsenal, am I going to complain? Of course, I'm not going to complain, man. You're crazy. As I said, you've seen the guy play in the league for a number of years. He'd be a threat. He'd be dangerous. He'd get us goals. He could leave it as a false nine, or leave him up top, whatever you look at it. Trossard's an interesting one because obviously he's been in the league a while now. But as I say, goals put people on notice. The guy
100%.
scored at Anfield. The guy scored against Tottenham. Was that last season? This season? I think definitely last season. I think he scored against them as well. Good player, man. Belgium international. Still quite young, as you mentioned. I didn't know his contract situation in terms of he's been the last year at Brighton. So, in another conversation, G, the fact that it's January, Arsenal don't particularly really shop very well. I don't know, man. The jury's out. If you're talking about the summer, then I might come to you saying, actually, you know what, G? I think there might be a possibility. You know, we might get one, or we might get one of them. But Torres, I don't know about. That's a very quick conversation because I don't know who the hell he is. I know he said Torres. I can't be Ferran Torres, but even he hasn't done too well since he's moved from Man City. But gone left Man City. Sorry, but yeah, I think it depends, man. What the murmurs we hear in it from, in particular from whatever trusted sources you want to believe, really. I mean, the main two, the obvious two, really, and that's Ornstein and then Fabrizio Romano. So there's some good Arsenal ones. There are some good journalists out there that do know what they're talking about. But yeah, it'd be interesting, man. Listen, time will tell. But the two Premier League guys, for me, it's a no-brainer. When you can get guys that play within the league, it makes a big difference. Zinchenko, Jesus, I rest my argument, really.
Yeah. 100%, bruv. And it's interesting because, like I said, you know, I think, going back to the main topic, at the end of the day, we've not seen enough of a consistent Reiss Nelson at his time at Arsenal, and everybody will have their views on why that is, whether that be injuries, whether that be lack of game time, whether that be missed opportunities, whatever it is. At the end of the day, for what reason or another, it hasn't happened. And I think one thing that we all have in common, though, is look, if Reiss Nelson overnight turns into,
Pele.
turns into prime
Pele.
Pele, between now and the end of the season, none of us are going to be complaining. Because at the end of the day, it's beneficial to us as a club, and obviously, what we're pursuing in terms of silverware and league position between now and the end of the season. So we'll just have to see how that goes. I think in terms of the transfer rumors, I haven't seen any rumors linking us to Trossard, but a player of his ability, and like you said, when a player scores goals, they make the headlines. That's when the tension really starts heating up. And at the end of the day, I think I can't recall all the stats, but he's putting in some impressive displays and he's scoring against some big clubs. This season and in previous seasons. And when you look at the contract situation, I think there'll be a lot of clubs sniffing around Trossard in January. And I think Brighton's only hope is that he actually signs a long-term deal, because losing a player of that quality for free in the summer is going to be absolute nuts. With Zaha, I've always been 50-50 with him. And for the very similar reasons to what you're saying. I think on his day, he's absolutely unplayable. However, there does seem to be a bit of petulance there, a bit of an attitude problem that I don't envision Arteta standing for. So I'm not sure if he particularly fits the character of play that Arteta looks for at Arsenal.
Keyword.
Yeah. And that's why I have my reservations whether or not we will ever make a move for him. My friend Bobby Brown always says that ship has sailed, mate. And I feel like that ship has probably somewhat sailed, particularly with now Arteta being at the club. When you look at the characters that he's removed from the dressing room, I'm not sure Zaha would be on the top of his shopping list in terms of characters that he's going to want to introduce to the dressing room. So it will be one to watch. I mean, I don't think...
there's some Arsenal fans, man. They won't let the Zaha one go, man.
They won't let it go, man.
They won't let it go, man.
I don't think the Zaha rumors will stop until he retires. Honestly, I think because it's public knowledge that he's an Arsenal fan, he's always going to be linked to Arsenal between now and, like I say, when he hangs up his boots, man. So, I kind of just think it is what it is. And we'll go to some of the comments before we wrap things up. Very, very quickly. Right. So we've got here, obviously, from the Armory ourselves. So thank you for everybody tuning in. We've got 13 people watching at the moment on YouTube. Not sure what it is on Twitter, but if for whatever reason you haven't liked the video, please do like the video. I'm hoping for at least 13 likes. If for whatever reason you haven't subscribed to the channel, we've had a massive kind of uptake in subscribers recently, which is fantastic. Good. I think we're one away from 650. So please let us hit the 650 before the end of this stream. So please do hit the like and subscribe button. We've got James here saying it's nothing personal for me, just we need level raisers. Nelson isn't the player we need to get to Man City's level, in my opinion. A winger of the caliber I'm on about is Leao. Yeah, the guy who plays for AC Milan. He's absolutely doing wonders over there. I've not seen much of him, but every time I see a clip, he's scoring an absolute worldie. Luke here saying Zaha for me all day long, but don't mind Trossard if we signed him. From the Armory TV ourselves, Trossard is a no-brainer. Still young, Premier League proven, turns up against the big boys. Not to mention that the contract expires next summer.
Joe, let me come in again. It's like I said, like this. Some Arsenal fans will be laughing. I've had this conversation before. It's in my group chat that I'm the admin for. But Arsenal fans used to get so seduced with big names. We need big names at the club. We need big. I said, look, we need to look within the league, man. We
100%.
Don't stop. What is? I said, now I think Arsenal fans have come around to the idea that listen, the days of Koulibaly and getting these. No. Look. There's men that play in the league that are good enough to play for Arsenal. People can argue the toss. They can bring up Opta stats. They can bring up XG coming out their ears. I always say to people, your own set of eyes do not lie to you. So get
100%.
round to the idea of players within the league that are good enough to play for our football club. End of story.
I hear you, bro. I hear you, man. And yeah, bring up the comments as we're talking because we're going to wrap things up. But yeah, I massively appreciate all the support. Gunner King in here. Big up yourself, Gunner King, man.
Chris,
Can't wait
well
to...
done.
Yeah,
That's
man.
another guy's name. Another guy's name
Yeah,
we talked
yeah.
about.
This guy
Mudryk.
looks an absolute
Yeah, he does.
baller. Absolute baller. And I'm sure at some point we will definitely do a show on him. But yeah, you know what? I mean, it's been the first show of GTalks. This week it's been Reiss Nelson. Next week, who knows what it's going to be? We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, Albert, you know what? You know me and you, man, bruv. We're like brothers from another mother. We chat almost every day, if not every other day. So it was an absolute pleasure that you know, I had to invite you on the show. Had to get you on. It felt only right. But yeah, thank you for obviously coming on because I know you're a busy man. You're on this Arsenal Lounge and League Judges TV and I don't know, bruv. I'm gonna have to, bruv. Next time, I'm gonna have to start chatting to the PA before I get the privilege. You get me? But yeah, man. I do appreciate your presence, and obviously, let the people know where they can find you, bro.
Yes, people. If you've never seen me before, which is it's a possibility because there's a lot of channels on YouTube, but trust me, it's hard to stay relevant. But yeah, people, come and check out Albert JTV. As G's alluded to, I'm part on Arsenal Lounge and the Judges TV, amongst other shows. I'm doing a show tomorrow on Arsenal Lounge. I have got Judges coming on with me tomorrow, so it should be good, man. Pick the bones with him. So yeah, hopefully. Half 6, 6.
Definitely. But like I said, yeah, man. If for whatever reason you're not following Albert on the socials, follow him up on the socials. If for whatever reason you haven't subscribed to his channel, he's past 1K, quickly closing on 2K. Make sure you hit up his socials and his YouTube channel. Absolute legend. Big boy in the YouTube game. And like I say, what I love about Albert so much is doors open for him and he keeps them open for his brothers. And I love that about him. Real genuine soul. So yeah, man, privileged to have you on my debut. Next week, we'll see who can come on. Maybe it'll be someone from the Armory. Maybe it will be another external guest, but we'll see. But yeah, just a few more comments here. Gunner King saying that this guy is a damn warrior. I'm sure we're going to do a show on him at some point. Bobby saying, great show, guys. Thank you, Bobby, for tuning in. Lee, obviously, loved the support from my old CC team. Enjoyed this, guys. Nice one. Canners, tremendous debut, G.
Oh, thank Canners, man.
Albert. It's been a minute. And lastly, the man, the reason why I'm here at the Armory TV, Tony the Silver One, big show, boys, love. And you know what? On that note, all I can say is we will be back next Tuesday or Wednesday between the hours of 6:30 till 8 o'clock, depending on obviously availability and obviously the football fixtures. But yeah, I mean, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed the show. And the only reason why I'm still talking is I'm trying to find the outro video.
It can happen, bro. Trust me. I've done it before.
Obviously, I'm new to the Armory backstage bit, so it's taking me a little while to get used to it. But listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Until next week, GTalks is over and out.